Typography. Sometimes I think typography must be a rude word when I use it outside my circle of designer friends. If I say it at a party, sometimes people ask me what I do for a living. I gradually see their feet start to turn in a different direction, and then before you know it, they've gone, and I'm standing there. But yet, we're all type consumers. Typefaces, fonts play a vital role in our everyday lives. They help us to navigate. They help us to make choices. They help us to shop. They keep us safe. And sometimes they even play a game of sleight of hand. It's hugely important, as the world evolves, that all of those involved in the future of communication and technology understand the power of type. I first fell in love with type in the 1970s. I remember the 70s in faded Polaroid colours and always hot like that summer of '76. I'm in the newsagents on the corner of my street, and it smells of a mixture of fresh tobacco, which is a kind of deep, woody, almost mahogany-like smell, and it's mingled with the sweetness of the blossom coming in from outside. My mum's up at the counter buying a packet of cigarettes and a newspaper, and I'm vaguely aware that the radio's not quite tuned in. But I'm over here at the sweet counter, where words are popping and fizzing with excitement, all shouting out their different stories. You've got the curly-whirly, curvy letters, all shouting out and promising this tongue twister of caramel sweet. You've got the cowboy letters on the golden nuggets bag, swaggering straight out of the Wild West. And you've got the huge moon-shaped type on the space dust, promising that when you eat it, it's going to pack a real noisy space-age punch. To the child me, fonts are like multi-sensory imagination grenades. They're all shouting out the stories of what I'm going to find inside the packaging. Fonts turn words into stories. Years later, I entered the world of work, and I become a typography professional, a graphic designer in a big corporate PR company in London. I arrive all bright-eyed and full of enthusiasm, so excited that I've left my hometown and I've moved to the big city and I've made it. But I very quickly discover that it's like going from baking novelty birthday cakes for friends to being thrown in at the deep end of working in a professional kitchen. I discover that being a graphic designer is about understanding what a client really means, not what they say. And I learn the tricks and the tools that I need to use to communicate their message in the most effective way. And this is where I really learn about the power of type. That a font can completely transform the meaning of a word. It can give it a backstory, it can give it a personality, and it can turn it into something that can influence. I learned that I can take something cheap and mass-produced, and I can make it look handmade, sizzling fresh, and much more expensive, even if it's not. And this is a very well-used advertising technique. I learned that I can take something temporary, and I can give it longevity and gravitas. And I learned that I can use a typeface to give a huge impersonal corporate organisation a voice that says, "We're friendly, we really care about you." Or, "We're exclusive and luxurious." Or, "Trust us, we've been established forever." Typography is storytelling. Fonts turn words into stories. And in the corporate world, these are powerful brand stories. As the years go on, there's this little voice that starts to get louder and louder inside me. And I find myself starting to question how I feel about my role in this industry. I start to ask questions about how I feel about telling stories, about telling typographic fibs. And I find myself joking with my colleagues about maybe we should be using fonts that reveal the truth, not typefaces that create myths. Today is the day of reckoning. I've been asked to work on a tobacco account. And no matter how hard I try to reconcile this in my mind, however hard I try to convince myself, this doesn't really matter. This is only type. People have free will at the end of the day. The more this crystallizes to me exactly how I feel about my role in this industry. Today I know that I don't want to tell a story about cigarettes that makes them appealing to a new generation of nicotine addicts. I don't want to tell a story about cigarettes that makes them attractive, cool, sexy, or anything that hides the truth of what they really are. I'm told that if I don't want to work on this account, I'm to question my future at this company. And it actually turns out to be an easy choice to make, to walk away and leave this job. Fonts turn words into stories with influence. And as the graphic designer, I've started to feel the responsibility of my role as the storyteller. So, how do fonts influence us without us really knowing about it? They work a little bit like clothes. When we see them, they make a first impression. When somebody's talking to you, you apparently take less than 10% of the meaning from what they say from the words they're actually saying. The rest of it comes from their tone of voice, from their body language, and from the clothes they wear. The clothes a person wears tells the world who they are. It tells the world who they want to be that day. We've all made assumptions about each other from the first impressions from the clothes that they're wearing, whether you've been aware of this or not. These words are dressed in Dido. This is a typeface, a type style that came out of a bit of healthy competition between a Parisian and an Italian printer at the turn of the 19th century. We've seen these used on fashion magazines like Vogue and Harper's Bazaar over the years, and as a result, we've come to associate them with style, femininity, and fashion. So this is like the little black dress, the LBD of the type world. These words are in aesthetique, which is inspired by the highly ornate lettering of the Victorian era, complete with all its sign painter flourishes. You'll be expecting what you'll read here to be entertaining and theatrical. By contrast, this is the interview suit of the type world. This is Times New Roman, which was created, commissioned by the Times newspaper in 1931, after it had received criticisms for being typographically antiquated. You would use Times New Roman when you want to come across as being serious and credible. You would wear Times New Roman when you want people to really know that you know what you're talking about. But of course, just because I'm talking typography, there's no need for me to be completely serious and Times New Roman about this. The stories that fonts tell can be serious and credible, but they can also be fun and entertaining, just like those sweets in that sweet shop when I was a child. Typefaces communicate with our subconscious. They leave our conscious brain to read what the words are actually saying. And that's why we often think that we're not really paying attention to fonts. We are, it's just we're not paying attention to them consciously. But they're still getting in there and they're still talking to us. They communicate with our subconscious in two different ways. The first is to tap into information that's been hardwired into our DNA for protection and for survival. We know instinctively, when we look at something round and red, that it's likely to be ripe and sweet and nutritious and good to eat. But we also know that if we look at something jagged, it looks angry, it looks dangerous, and it's likely to taste sour or to taste bitter. We can play with this. We can use this to alter your experiences. At a recent event, I got the 100 members of the audience to eat 2 identical jelly beans. They ate the first jelly bean while they were looking at a round-shaped typeface, and they ate the second jelly bean while they were looking at jagged, angular-shaped letters. The audience members rated the jelly bean eaten to the round-shaped typeface as tasting 17% sweeter, and they rated the identical jelly bean eaten to the jagged-shaped typeface as tasting 11% sourer. So the fonts actually altered how the sweets tasted. And I find I get the same results with crisps. I can make them taste saltier and crunchier depending on the typeface. How would it be if we could use this for good? To ramp up the salt and the sugar in our imaginations like a placebo via the fonts on the packaging, and to reduce the amounts in the actual food, but to do this without altering our perception of what the food tastes like. This is all being researched by scientists in Oxford at the moment, and they are obviously researching it under much more stringent and scientific conditions than my slightly theatrical demonstrations. But the results all bear each other out, that this works. The other way that typefaces communicate with your subconscious is to reference the complex library of associations that you've been building up in your brains all of your lives. You build these up every time you see a font from the context that you see it used in. So some of these are pretty universal. People around the world will recognize them. Others will be down to your own very, very personal and unique experiences. Some of these remain constant, unaltered over time, and others will change with the flick of an event that adds to their history and creates a whole new set of associations. And some of these are so famous that I don't actually need to show them to you. I'm going to get you to create these in your imaginations. So if you imagine the curved red ribbon-like letters of the Coca-Cola logo, these tell a story of 1950s America, of long, hot summer days, James Dean, and movies like Grease. When you look at these, you know that they're probably going to taste sweet, even if you've never actually tasted Coke before. You also know if a film or a book is going to be a tale of cowboys swaggering out of the dusty leather and whiskey-smelling Wild West. You know this from those condensed letters with the big slabs of serifs to their tops and their bottoms. These were invented in England after the Industrial Revolution, and they were shipped around the world in the 1800s. But we've seen them used in Hollywood movies so many times now that when we see them, we automatically think cowboys. Fonts turn words into stories. And to demonstrate this, I'm going to show you a story in 15 fonts. Long ago, in a galaxy far, far away, Darth Vader was the front man for the evil empire. Darth and his stormtroopers attack the beautiful Princess Leia's ship. 2 droids escape. Down on Tatooine, farm boy Luke sets off on an epic adventure. There's a gunfight in the Mos Eisley Cantina. Luke and the gang escape and they travel via hyperspace. There's a disturbance in the Force. Alderaan is destroyed. Luke and the gang get trapped on the Death Star in a garbage crusher. Darth and Obi-Wan fight. Obi-Wan dies. The rebels blow up the Death Star and they throw a huge party. So next time I'm at a party, if it's you I get talking to and I say the word typography, will you make your excuses and politely walk away? Or will you join me in my world of fonts and stories? Thank you.